All right, I know they say the market climbs a wall of worry, but we've thrown more than the usual number of worries at this market. It continues to rise even today, and the likelihood that the Kavanaugh nomination could do everything from go forward but get significantly delayed to imploding. This as we up the trade ante, and the markets are sort of shrugging off the economic impact, even if it means more tariffs on more goods. That could mean price your goods this holiday season. And then you have the uncertainty of how budget talks go and whether they've just papered over some differences that will come exploding in the weeks ahead. All of that having very, very little effect. As I said, we're following the Dow Jones Industrials closely because it is the one average, remember, that didn't follow the others in August into record territory. Well, it is making up for some lost time now. About 2/3 of a percentage point away from hitting a record last achieved the end of January, I believe, of this year. Let's get the read on all of this from former Bush 43 Deputy Assistant Brad Blakeman, Wall Street Journal Associate Editor John Bussey, and commentator Danielle McLaughlin. John, the market thing, I know we try to relate them oftentimes to events, and that's a stretch. But it is remarkable today that climbing through all of this. Why?
Yeah. So maybe because it's inured to the chaos at this point in Washington. The Kavanaugh dust-up probably is less related to things that the market's concerned about anyways, right? They'll say, well, that's the Supreme Court. Big question is, why isn't this market reacting more to or taking a negative view of what's happening on the tariff front?
That one amazes me.
Me too. And maybe we just haven't seen it yet. Maybe it just hasn't completely digested. We don't know the broader impact of this on industries, companies that are going to have to raise their prices, consumers who may not be able to afford those raised prices. We haven't kind of seen it play through the economy yet. So maybe the market's just kind of standing by and saying, we got a great tax cut, earnings are up, we're still rocking and rolling.
You know, Danielle, I have a theory on the trade thing, because John's the expert, but my crackpot theory goes something like I'd prepare my parents for my report card when I was a kid. If they thought I was going to fail everything, and that's how I telegraphed it, when they would see the C's, dare I say some B's, they thought I was mensa material.
Right. You were
so
managing
I prepared them for the worst. So with the trade thing, the reason why I mentioned this, there is a point. That
there always is. Yeah.
But that we were so factoring in bad news on trade, upping the ante and all of this. And lo and behold, we come to discover within the Chinese response that the tariffs are going to be 10%, not the 25% feared. That on our list of goods targeted, the more onerous provisions don't go into effect until the end of the year. But I'm only mentioning that to say we grasp at good straws and trade accordingly. What do you think?
I think that's probably true. To your point, John, I think that once we get past the midterms, past Black Friday, getting closer to Christmas, once consumers start worrying whether they can go to Macy's and buy something or not, whether that's a television or an item of apparel, I think we might see something slightly different. But your point about managing expectations is well taken. We have seen all sorts of chaos since the beginning of 2017, and really all we've seen is the markets go up and up and up. So I think there is some sort of they're immune in some ways to the political ups and downs of what's happening in Washington.
You know, the Kavanaugh thing, well, I agree that it's not such a market-centric event. He is a market or business-friendly deemed judge, and he would be deemed as such as a justice. So if he doesn't make it to the court and we have to get a whole new person, I'm going the extreme route, we're still dealing with a 4-4 court. I mean, I understand all that. But they'd rather see him in there than not, wouldn't they?
They would, but 9 is great, but 8 works too. And I don't think they don't see that.
But 4-4 decisions revert back to whatever the lower court ruled, right?
That's true. But I think, to John's point, this president and this Congress is getting much more leeway from the business community and the consumer community, and they're giving time to see whether or not this is all going to work out.
You worked with Kavanaugh.
Yes, right? I did.
In the Bush White House?
Absolutely.
All right, so does any of this ring true to you, potentially true?
No, it doesn't ring true to the person I know, the person I worked with. I know Ashley quite well. I worked with her daily. I saw them socially. I saw them professionally. And then my lawyer hat, looking at the complete allegations in the letter. It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up to the person I know.
Do you think he should still go before this committee on Monday, even if his accuser does not?
No. I think Brett Kavanaugh's hearing should close if the accuser does not show up. There's nothing further that Kavanaugh can add to the questioning that has already taken place. I think the opportunity is there. If she misses the opportunity, I think the hearing closes down and we move to a vote.
Here's what the markets might not be counting on. And might do a better job of discounting, or maybe it already has, is that if this goes badly, and the Republicans are trying to choreograph this very carefully, they're so concerned about the college-educated woman voter looking at this and saying that the professor didn't get a fair shake, or this wasn't properly examined, or the FBI should have been called in, and maybe there's something to this, and it affects the midterms. And you see a change.
But you're
in the
taking
House.
as a given there that Republicans lose. But the president, by the way, in New Bern, North Carolina, doing his hurricane tour, but finish that.
Yeah, that it energizes.
That might not be a given.
It energizes a body of the electorate that was already energized and they were concerned about, and it further energizes them because they've handled this badly. If that happens, then you have a midterm
So by not
result.
doing an FBI investigation,
Right,
that's
or
bad.
whatever it might be perceived as, then you have a midterm result that does affect the markets. That's
You could just as much galvanize Republicans who feel this guy is getting ramrodded, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this cuts both ways. I will say that Democratic women are the most motivated voters out there in polling ahead of the midterms, number one. Number two, I think we need to be disabused of our biases looking in this, and I think there's a couple of ways of doing that. Number one, think about it if this was a woman from Texas, a Republican voter. Number two, what if this was Merrick Garland? How would Democrats feel about it? Number three, Democrats need to be prepared for the idea that Trump will cut bait and will let Judge Kavanaugh go and maybe replace him with someone who's even more ideologically to the right, someone who is even less favoured by Democrats. This is complex.
Wasting, especially if the Senate were to switch hands.
Sure.
He's got to stick with this guy, unless something.
I think.
But you know what I found in politics is if you just do the right thing, it always works out. When you overthink, when you over-politicize, that's when things go terribly south. So I think Republicans need to do the right thing. They need to stick to the rules.
Well, Jeff Flake and Susan Collins were for giving her a chance to speak. She doesn't want to speak until an FBI investigation ensues. So that delays this for quite some time. Would they all of a sudden, if Chuck Grassley says, we're not doing that, I talked to Mitch McConnell, he's not doing that, then what?
Well, I think she's given every opportunity to what she requested prior to her switching her mind on bringing in the FBI.
To John's point, that's going to look like Republicans shut her down.
No, I don't think so. The Constitution is clear. The Senate has jurisdiction. The FBI doesn't have jurisdiction. The Senate does. And the body of that Judiciary Committee has an obligation, a constitutional obligation, that shouldn't be subverted because somebody requests something different.
But the voter's not going to be looking at this as a process issue. The voter's going to be looking at this as a fairness issue.
Right.
That's what Republicans on this committee are concerned about.
Right. And particularly because sexual assault, not dissimilarly from domestic violence, these are crimes where, or alleged crimes, we're very clear about that, where women can be sort of abused twice, once in the actual act and then the second time around in the coming out of it. And there are plenty of women, more women that we really want to think about, who have been victims of this kind of a thing, whether it's alleged or actual, and a lot of crimes that are not like any other crime where the victim doesn't necessarily come forward. So there is the humanity piece of this, there is the process piece of this, and there's also the political piece. And sometimes doing the right thing is not going to be what's politically expedient for Republicans, and that's a hard thing for them to grapple with.
My advice is do the right thing.